Jackie de Crinis, hi.
Hi.
Welcome to Me Time. Thank you so much for being available for doing the podcast or wanting to do the podcast.
Oh, I can't wait. Are you kidding? I've listened to a bunch of the episodes and I just love it. I love the concept. I
Oh
love
my
you, of
God.
course. And I just love the concept of me time because it's the essence of what I now do for a living, which is tell people how to focus on me time, right?
This is why, okay. And yes, although I'm not an expert, so I'm doing it. This is something about myself that I sort of over time have come to know and really cherish. And then I've also, in listening to your podcast, I have wondered sometimes if my me time can go a little too far. It can turn into like isolation. It can turn into being very walled. It can turn into like a lot of that too. So this podcast is about, sort of getting to know myself at this point, but it's more about like enlisting experts who actually know about these things that I don't know as well or that I'm still kind of learning about. Well,
By the
we'll
way,
go back.
just having heard it and
Yeah.
knowing you, I'd say you're as much of an expert in this as anybody. And there is no such thing as an expert in me time because it's so individualistic.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
and I'd say anybody is an expert who practices it. Like that's all that matters.
I love that. Oh my God, Jackie, I love that. Thank you for saying that, by the way. I listened to your podcast first off, the title of Jackie's podcast is The Overthinker's Guide to Joy,
Yes.
which I feel like there's so many people. I mean, I relate to that so much just because I feel like it's just like what I said about, I mean, on a very, very small scale, but like what I said about the dog, like meeting that sort of first dog. And then
Mm.
I overthought it to the point of like sabotaging the joy of
Yeah.
whatever that initial feeling is or moment. Then I feel like I have a tendency I can do that a lot. Let's go back to the very beginning though, because I want to
Okay.
first
Wait.
off,
Like birth or
yeah, let's go back to the beginning. No, so I'll say, so for everybody like listening, so Jackie and I know each other from psych days because Jackie was our executive from the network that was, I mean, I don't know if we want to say favorites, but I would say when Jackie came to Vancouver, everyone lost their minds because we loved her so much. And it's true. Like everyone universally felt this way, feels this way, and still does. So that's how you and I remember meeting you. And then I remember like every time you came to Vancouver, I wanted to just sort of get into either a dinner or a corner or someplace and talk to you because everything you said was so you were not you're an incredible executive, but you had this like nurturing life, like caring. You cared more about like how we were doing mentally in the experience of the show than it was
yeah.
about like let's make this show get huge ratings. It was like
Yeah.
obviously that was a byproduct of that because we were all very happy.
Yeah.
You were so focused on that part, which that is so rare. So
Well, I
Jackie's
think, first of all, I
angel.
thank you for that. I thank you.
Yeah.
That's an incredibly generous comment and memory. So thank you. And
I mean it.
I think it really sort of speaks to the fact that I do care more about getting in a conversation or having a lunch or a dinner or a coffee with somebody and finding out how they are, like how
Yeah.
they feel, than I am about, and I do believe success comes from that, right? I think that if
Yeah.
everyone is happy is such a funny word because happy can be so triggering for people. Like, oh, do I have to be happy? That's toxic positivity and all that. So I'm
Yes.
very careful about the word quote happy, but
Yes.
the happier, that's a I feel like that's a safe one.
Yeah.
The happier someone is on
Yeah.
their relative scale,
Yeah.
the more productive, the more successful they're going to be,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So
Of
for
course.
me, yeah, when we got to get together, whether it was the writers, the actors, the directors, whomever, the producers, yeah, if everybody was feeling good,
Yeah.
then you're going to make a great show. And then if you make a great show, it's going to make great ratings. And if it makes great ratings, it's going to make great money. Like it all goes hand in hand. And people always talk to me about that when they hire me as a coach. They're like, well, how are you going to help my business? And because they're like, am I hiring a business coach? And I always say, I'm a
Right.
life coach. I
Right.
happen to consult on people's businesses, but I'm a life coach because I work with the individual
Right.
to find more happiness, more peace, more well-being in their body.
Right.
And then we go do successful things together.
Right. Because that is the seed of where that success comes from. It's like
I think so.
you were so far ahead of like, well, I mean, I didn't want to say it, like you were just doing it differently. It was just like Jackie's way. And then I remember you saying, I forget what season it was that you were going to move to Hawaii and you were going to still be an executive, but that there was, so that's what I mean with like go into the beginning of like the life coach part. And also you, like, what was, I talk about on this, like a moment of impact, like these moments of impact that happen in our lives where we're just like, it changes us forever. We know we're not going to be the same person before and after, or, or it sparks a major change for us to say like, okay, I need to make. So that's what I mean when I say going back to the beginning. So Jackie moved to Hawaii, and I'll let you tell all of that story. And now you're a life coach, but I know there were years that you were still an executive and spending your time in Hawaii. So what
Correct.
brought you
So, I mean,
Hawaii time? And
I think there's never a light switch. Like we like to think, because it's easy to put everything in a box and make everything shorthand, right? You're like, oh, that was the day I decided this. And I flipped the light switch and now I'm a new person. I live in a new place. I do different things. And I don't think there's a light switch for anything as much as I wish there were. I think we're all on paths, not a path, because there is no a path either. We're on different paths and we constantly reach different forks in the road, and we go to the left or we go to the right. And sometimes we end up on a path that's circular, like we go in a circle and then we're like, oh shit, we're right back where we were. And then you have to choose another path. But I think that we're always sort of seeding the path, if you will. Probably the wrong, I think I'm probably mixing my metaphors, but we make different decisions every single day. Like every decision you make in your life, whether it's to adopt a dog or get a facial or go on an audition or meet a friend for lunch, every one of those decisions, whether you're thinking about it or not, has so many tentacles and so many opportunities for something that maybe you're goal oriented towards. Like if you meet, like, for example, if you're meeting with a casting director at lunch, of course it's to meet and connect and, see what roles are out there. Right. But it could just be a friend. And then you run into somebody at that lunch and then they introduce you to somebody else. And now all of a sudden you have a connection in some other way.
I love when that happens, by the way. I think that's so cool.
Too.
Yeah. And I believe in it. I do think it sort of takes it's so funny because this week I was thinking about like what state we need to be in to not miss that opportunity. Like that you might go to a lunch and meet somebody, and then you might meet the other person and you might not think anything of it because you're preoccupied with like a million things going on in your head and you're kind of not present in like what is happening. But I feel like if you are, you don't miss those things of like, wow, this is crazy. I came here to have this lunch. Now I'm having this experience meeting this person, and this might lead to that. And like, who knows? Yeah.
Right. And that's in every aspect of your life. That could be your career.
Yeah.
It could be dating.
Yeah.
It could be where you live in the future. It could be a charitable endeavor. It could be making an impact on somebody's life that you don't even realize.
Yeah.
Or they're making an impact on your life that you don't even realize yet.
Yeah.
And so I think, I love that question you asked yourself.
Yeah.
I think when I have clients come to me and they're just kind of lost, right? They've lost their job, or they've lost their relationship, or they've lost their income, or they've sometimes lost their home. I mean, all kinds of circumstances, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, it feels like scorched earth to them. It feels like everything, because one thing that was important to them is gone, maybe more.
Yeah.
It feels like everything is gone. And you know that if you've lost a pet, if you've ever broken up with a loved one, if you've ever lost a relative.
Yeah.
It feels like all of a sudden the world is very dark and very gloomy.
And there's no grounding. There's nothing to root to say, I'm okay,
No, you just feel like you're in the fog.
Right.
And what I say to people is start simple, right? It's not about like, go get another job.
Yeah.
go meet another guy or girl or whatever your story
Yeah.
is, or, go out and be curious.
Oh, yes. Go
Just be
on.
curious.
Yeah.
Like take
Yeah.
yourself to Starbucks if that brings you joy. Spend the $5 or $6 on a cup of coffee or
Yeah.
decaf or tea or whatever that brings you joy. And I'm not saying it has to be eating or drinking. I'm just
Of
giving an
course.
example.
Yeah.
Take yourself to Starbucks. Does that bring you joy? Sit in Starbucks or sit outside and let the sun on your face, or call a friend or an acquaintance or a neighbor and say, I'm going to Starbucks. Do you want something? Or do you want to meet me?
Yes.
And then all of
Oh,
a sudden you're just making little baby, tiny, tiny, tiny inroads to a path out of your wilderness. That's
that's
it.
so beautiful. And it feels so this is so interesting about what you're saying. And because I feel like a lot of times for me, and I would say that probably for people in general, but I know for me for sure that I can I can see all the steps instead of just the one that says go to Starbucks and just see what happens. Like that, take the walk, go have a dinner by yourself or just see whatever it is. I will see step 20 and I'll get overwhelmed. So I don't
Mhm.
take step one, whether that's a project, whether that's life, whether that's the thing. Like so the by kind of distilling by putting it into this like, no, just that's all you have to do. You're already making a change. You're
That's
already
right.
opening the door.
That's
If
right.
even in the simplistic, it might sound so simple, but go get a coffee, enjoy
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I
And
feel
I'm all about the baby steps. And so people who are very result oriented, like really, and I am type A, so I'm not judging.
yeah.
um, but people who are very result oriented, you
Hmm.
know, only can have hits, only can have big
Mm,
jobs, only can have, prestigious relationships and big homes and all the things.
right.
They, when they reach an impasse because of a circumstance, again, heartbreak, breakup, what have you, loss of a job, their world crumbles because they're so used to like everything big and meaningful. And I always say it's not about the awards, the bonuses, the raise, the your name in the press that day. That's fine if those are your goals. We can get there. It is about the baby step,
Right.
because the baby step is what leads to the next baby step.
Yeah.
So people who live in clutter is a great example. They're so overwhelmed by their clutter, they
Hmm.
can't get out of their own way.
Hmm.
And I always say, okay, what can we start with? Can we start with one drawer in the kitchen?
Yeah. I had a
Can
home organization person on. I mean, that's sort of her expertise, but
I
one of the
listened to
things,
that episode? I was
yeah,
like
she was like, your
so
purse.
into it.
Yeah. She was
Yeah.
like, just start with your purse. If you, yeah. But the
Yes.
drawer.
So start with your purse, start with a drawer, start with your car, like clean out your
Yes.
car. Like, again, I'm
Yes.
not giving organizational tips. I'm just saying, like, what happens is people who are big thinkers tend to focus on the result and not on the little thing. So, yeah. So, let me go back to answer your question. So, in 2009, I had just gotten married a second time, 5 years earlier, to my second husband. And I had two older girls from my previous marriage, and then I had our baby, who was about
Mhm.
5,
Mhm.
not even 5, I don't think, when we bought our house in Hawaii. And my second husband wanted to move somewhere out of Los Angeles. He just felt
Mhm.
like Los Angeles was just too impacted, too many people, too much
Yeah.
dirt, too much whatever. He wanted to live
Yeah.
someplace more in nature. He was a financial advisor, so he had his own company in Los Angeles. And so it was a little bit of like a fantasy for him too. Like, could we ever telecommute? Could we do
Mhm.
something else? And it's possibly too long of a story to how all the steps came, but it started with the step of buying a second home, and we didn't know if we would rent it until we could move there or what the machinations were. But we bought the second home in Hawaii, and we would go back and forth whenever we could. Flights were cheap back in 2007 when we bought it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That changed. And then it was my oldest daughter who came to us. She was a freshman in high school, and she said, I know you guys keep talking about moving to Maui someday. I think I would like to do that. I
Wow.
know. And it was like this, she had had enough of LA. She had had enough of
Right.
like the pressures of the private school, like, and all of the things. And I was kind of like, oh my God, maybe this is the sign. It's like when you ask
Yeah.
Peanut, you know, what's
Yeah.
the
Okay.
sign?
Sure. Yeah.
And so I went to my bosses at USA and I said, would it be possible to restructure my job in any capacity? Like, you can make me a consultant, you can make me a producer, you could reduce my job, you can, you know, whatever. Could we do that? And to their credit, they said, let us talk about it, let us think about it. And so what they did was they split my job in half.
Yeah.
And I took current programs for the years that I was in Maui, and development, which was my other half of my job, went to my former colleague who was coming back to USA, which was Bill McGoldrick. We split
Yeah.
the job in half,
Yeah.
and he did development and I did current. And I did that long distance before there was Zoom, before there was a pandemic, before there was COVID, before all the things.
Yeah.
And it just worked. I just did it on the telephone, and then came back to Los Angeles for what was to run programming for USA Network, which included development and comedy and long form and reality and
Wait, when did you
drama.
come? You came
I
back.
came back in 2014,
Right.
so
Oh, that's
almost 5
right.
years later, and I was
Yeah.
on the ground till 2018. I'm
I
sorry,
mean,
till 2016. So yeah, I was there for 3 years in this
yeah.
last, what I knew was going to be the last run of my executive career, because I promised my husband we would move back to Maui. I
Yeah.
would still work in television if they allowed me to, but
Right.
I segued into being a producer, and then ultimately I just decided that I had had
Enough.
enough of that.
What I love about this story, I've heard you tell it a couple times, or well, we had you on the Psych podcast as well.
Mhm.
Is it reminds me of like, you didn't know, but you, at least this is the curious, but also if we don't ask the question, if we don't like see, you know, you went to USA to say, this is what I would like to do. Is this possible? I think that, and I think for a lot of people, that would have felt so intimidating, and like, surely they would say no. I mean, not to you, because Jackie is magical. So I'm sure they were like, Jackie, whatever you want. But I think just asking the question of, okay, this is, you know, it's a perfect world scenario, but why not ask for it? And maybe you'll land somewhere in the, you know, but it's really scary sometimes to do that. And I feel like when we do, though, you never know how it might work out.
Exactly. And I
And
think, you know, my sister is an executive coach, which is sort of a weird coincidence, because I don't consider us doing the same thing, but we do ostensibly do the same thing.
yeah, go
So
ahead.
she works in the Silicon Valley, and she works
Oh,
for like companies like Google and Hewlett Packard, and she came from that world. She was in that world for a long time. So just like I
wow.
coach people in television, she coaches people in
Wow.
tech.
Tech. Oh, that's so
Um,
cool.
so she tends to be hired by the companies and work with the teams and motivation and productivity, but ultimately coaching is coaching, right?
Right.
But she was the one who sort of mapped out for us before I went and did this about 2 years earlier. And she was the one like, you have to think in the world of anything is possible. And not specific to, you get to ask
Yes.
them for this job change. But that's what started the wheels turning. So when I say to you, it wasn't a light switch, it was my husband's desire to leave
Yeah.
Los Angeles. And then it was our mutual desire that if we could ever live anywhere else, it would be Maui. And then it was my talking to my sister in a coaching capacity long before I was a coach about like what's possible, not how, but what's possible. There's a big difference, because so many people get caught up in the how
Yes.
instead of the what if.
Yes. Yes. But you
And
dream in the what if, like that's how it like go on. Okay.
that's how you start, is
Yeah.
what if you get
Yeah.
curious. So we're back to the curious.
Yeah. This is a great. I feel like I'm getting like a session with you. I'm like, I love
Good. I
this.
love it.
It
But
worked.
so
My plan worked.
your
Anyway.
plan worked. But so it's just not linear. Like I could tell you the linear story. We bought the house, we did this, we did this, we did
Of
this.
course.
But that's the how.
Right.
But some of it was trying on the belief. And so we tried on a little bit of the belief when we got married, and he talked about eventually moving out of Los Angeles. Then we tried on a little bit of the belief when we bought a second home, with the idea of like, well, how's this going to work? Are we going to rent it and wait till we retire? Are we going to go back and forth? Or are we going to, and then it was, you know, listening for signs, like my daughter saying, I would like to live there. And okay, maybe that's the sign. And then it's trying it on. And then it was being willing to pivot when USA said, you got to come back.
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
setting a boundary and saying, okay, I'll come back for a 3-year contract, but not
Right.
forever.
Wow. Did your family come back
Yeah.
with you?
Yeah,
Wow.
my
Okay.
oldest was already in college by
Uh-huh.
then, and my
Right.
middle daughter was already living in Los Angeles with her dad, so that was easy. And
Yeah.
then my little one was little enough that she could come back with us. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, we all came back. And then we all went, oh, well, we all was just then the little one and my husband and I, right? Because
Yeah.
the other two were already in college.
So you completed the three. Okay. So you completed the 3 years here.
Yeah.
And
And then
then
I took a producing gig.
that's
That
right.
was my
Yes.
that was my segue. And I did that for about 2 years. And that was a really big learning curve, super hard to be a non-writing producer.
Yeah.
And particularly
Yeah.
not on the ground in Los
Yeah.
Angeles or New York. And I loved the experience. It taught me a lot about running my own business. But I
Right.
kept feeling this, and this had been a decade before, as you know, a testament to what you were saying, which is
Yes.
my
You're
love of television is huge. I
yeah.
did it for 30 plus years, watched it as much as I could sneak in as a kid when my mother was saying, please turn off the TV.
Yeah.
I love television. I love entertainment. I love people in entertainment. But what I loved about it was actually the stories, the personal stories. And I think I talked about this
You
in our
did.
episode, which
Yes.
is what sold me. I didn't buy Psych. Psych was actually purchased by Lindsay Sloan and Bill McGoldrick when
Mhm,
I was on
mhm.
maternity leave. But when I came back a few weeks later and they're like, we bought a show. And I'm like, oh, great. Who's the writer? Steve Franks. Okay, great. And then he came in to pitch. What I fell in love with was the story about his own father and going to the set of Moonlighting and listening to that
Beautiful.
rat-a-tat-tat dialogue and
Mhm,
not wanting to be a cop like his dad, but wanting to be on a movie set, TV set.
mhm, mhm,
And like, that's what like got me.
mhm.
And I
Yeah.
can say for every single project I have ever bought, from pitch to script to produced pilot that was in turnaround, there always had to be a personal story attached to some component of it for me to be leaning in.
Yeah.
Didn't
Yeah.
have to be autobiographical. Don't misunderstand. I've
Yeah.
bought
No.
fantasy and science fiction and all the
Sure.
things. But I needed to understand why the writer loved it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it could have been, again, curiosity. I was sitting with so-and-so and they were telling this story. And honest to God, if I went through every series that I ever developed, and there are dozens, maybe more, because
Yeah.
not all of them go to series, every one of them, I can tell you the story behind the story.
Wow. I mean, that's why you're different. This is why I say, like, I don't even want to say like you were, because I think I started to say like you were so far ahead of, no, it wasn't even, that's more on like the life coach, and like you were on to this, that this is what matters. Like, this is the part in anything, but like in the work we do in TV and all that as well. But like, you were so already there even before any of us, I feel like, were even aware. It was just the way you would talk and the way you were. It was like, this feels different. Like, this is
Thank you.
different. This is like Jackie's way.
Yeah, I don't think it
And-
was it was certainly not calculated. It certainly
right.
stemmed from my own personal interest, which was human interest stories. And I just decided that long ago that when I got into television, that that was the lens in which I was going to approach material, which was, do I relate to this writer or do I relate to this character? It doesn't matter. I don't
Yeah.
have to. And why? Why do they relate? Why is
Yeah.
this writer relating? And why am I
Yeah.
relating? And if I can get into that, then I have a narrative to pull from for the longevity of the series. I have a place to go back as a development executive to say,
Yeah.
this is what you got me in the tent with.
Yeah. I love that.
And then we could always draw from that. So when it starts to spin and develop and go off in tangents, that's okay. That's great. But I could have sort of my place where I spoke from, that this is where I fell in love with you or your characters or your world.
Right.
How do we tap into that again? If I
Yeah.
felt like we were going off course.
And there was a place to go back to remember that feeling. But again, I feel like it's very rare though. And so it's not surprising that you're in the field now of life coaching, but how you get to Hawaii, you come back for 3 years, you're producing. When does that turn when you take this passion that you have on set with us within the work that you do, and now you're actually coaching people in this world?
Yeah. I think it was like the first year of my life where wasn't being paid to work since I was probably, I don't know, 16 years old. I mean, I've worked my whole life. And I was in between these deals and my producing deal had run out. And I was like, okay, I'm not being paid now in
Right.
2018 or 2019. What do I want to do? What do I want to do? And
Right.
so I started taking courses and classes, and I got my yoga certification, and I went and got a coaching certification. And I met with coaches, I met with therapists. I have a degree in psychology, a bachelor's in psychology. So I kind of was aiming towards something that was more soulful and purposeful. How do I do that was the question. And then it became very clear to me in the middle of 2019. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be a coach. That's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
And I just started, taking course after course after course, everything from how to run your own business to how to be a coach to how do you get clients to how to work social media to all the things, right? How to podcast.
Right. Right.
And
Wait, when did you start your podcast?
the first one was an incarnation of the one that exists now. So the first one was called Joy Hunting. And
Okay.
that was what you were talking about. Like,
Yeah.
how do you get out of your own way and find joy? Like, how do you avoid that sort of self-isolation or that overthinking?
Right.
And so that was my first, and I just did series of them. I did one on meditation, and I did one on the holiday, how to survive the holidays. And I did one on sort of the core values of coaching, everything from career and money and, health and all the things. And then I took a long break, and then I decided to kind of reinvent it.
Yeah.
And I retitled it, relabeled it, had a different producer, all the things, and started doing it first once a week and then twice a month.
Yeah.
And so that's how the Overthinker's Guide to Joy came to be. But it was basically a free guide so that people could listen to my philosophies.
Yeah.
And if they couldn't afford coaching or didn't have time for coaching, they could at least hear it and take like these 15-minute, 20-minute nuggets and apply them to help reduce their anxiety and stress, which is what I specialize in.
Yes, that to everybody listening, you like Jackie's podcast. It's so easy to listen to, like your voice and but it's so beautiful. So most recently, you posted, and then I also listened to the podcast about it, about the idea of New Year's resolutions, just to give you an idea of how Jackie reframes things, like, and then it's like you go from, a resolution, and I'll let you explain this, but what I took away from it was this feeling of like, I've not been good, so I've been bad, so let me be better, or I need to be, whatever. And reframing that thinking, because that isn't necessarily the most successful way, I think, to like accomplish that. But I would never have thought about it this way. And then you talk about intention, and you posted this beautiful thing for New Year's, which is why, of course, I was like, Jackie, you must be on Me Time tomorrow.
I'm so happy to be here. It's
I didn't
awesome.
come on anyway, but there was like all this dog stuff that was like happening in December.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, we're back. And I was like, more of this. And you're just like the perfect person. So I loved that podcast, but since it is the beginning of the year, I don't know if you wanted to like speak on it just a little bit of like what you were
I mean, it's really simple.
Yeah.
Every year, and this has gone on for decades, people, you go to a New Year's party or Christmas party or right after New Year's, and all you hear about is, in the beginning of the new year, I'm joining a gym. At the beginning of the new year, I'm going to stop drinking. At the beginning of the new year, I'm going to find a new job. And those are all great goals. Like nothing wrong with setting a goal for the new year. I love a refresh.
Yeah.
Awesome. But what I hear is when they get attached to this concept or this dogma, if you will, of New Year's resolutions, there's so much weight on that. It's like saying best friends forever. It's like,
pressure's on.
Pressure's on, as opposed to that's my best friend. I love that. Great. Awesome.
Totally.
But I just I'm very careful about words that feel heavy.
Yeah.
Because we have to adhere to our own thoughts.
Yeah.
And so I just think resolutions just set us up for failure. And statistically, because only 8% of resolutions ever stick, and that's only through February, I don't even know what the annual statistic is. Resolutions are just absolutely set up for failure because we go from this overeating, over drinking, overspending, overing
Yeah.
of holidays
Yeah.
to this all or nothing mentality of like, I'm going to be good. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to join a gym. I'm going to find a guy or a girl. I'm
Yeah.
going to have a new job. And great. But I just like, I want to soften the edges because
Yeah.
resolution feels like if you fuck up, excuse my language,
Please.
you know, in the first week, but Friday you have a cupcake and Saturday night you have a beer and Sunday night you're eating a pizza by yourself.
Yeah.
Or you went out and bought something that you couldn't afford, or you didn't get the job you thought you wanted, or fill in the blank.
Right.
That now your resolution is dead. And so for the
Yeah.
next 300 days, you have to, 360 days, you have to go, oh, I screwed up that resolution. I'll wait till next year.
Yeah.
Bad. That's not
Yeah.
good. So I
Yeah.
like the idea of reframing them with the word intention. And again, we're just talking semantics.
Yeah.
But
But it matters. I just read this
words
quote
matter.
and I forgetting who said it, but it was about how we talk to ourselves and the words we use when we talk to ourselves. It does matter.
It does matter.
Yeah.
It does matter. And kinder, gentler words to ourselves and to others matter.
Yeah.
And so when you set an intention for the new year, I would, and I have a whole thing about SMART goals too, which is very specific goals as opposed to like lofty ones.
Yeah.
But when you set an intention for the year, then what we're back to that thing I was talking about. Like there is no light switch, there is no linear path, but we set down stepping stones for our future self. So like moving to Maui was like a long intention. It had years before it happened, and then it had years before it was executed. Sometimes changing your career can take weeks, months, years. Sometimes finding the love of your life can take many years. And there's no timeline on it. And I'm not saying that your intention shouldn't be with purpose and with some parameters, but that way, if you eat the cupcake or you buy the sweater that you really couldn't afford, or you didn't get the job you were sure you were going to get, it's okay. You can still stay with the intention of this year that that's your goal.
Yes. Yes.
So
it's not dead.
It's not dead. It's not all or nothing. And that's a big thing I talk about in coaching, because most of my clients tend to be people pleasers and perfectionists. And people pleasers, me too, raising my hand, people pleasers and perfectionists tend to have very black and white, all or nothing thinking.
Yeah.
I'm good, I'm bad.
Yes.
They're good, they're bad. Right, wrong. Yes, no.
And at the first rejection, of whatever it is, you're out. Yeah. Yeah.
And what happens is it just limits the possibilities for us. It limits job opportunities. It limits love. It limits money. It limits friendship. It limits so many things. And again, I'm not suggesting you don't have boundaries. I'm not suggesting that you cut off things that are toxic. Oh my gosh. Yes, please.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, of course. I mean, obviously.
All day long.
We're not talking about
I'm
that.
talking about the gray areas.
Yeah.
You know, I'm talking about like
that's where it's harder. It's easier to see the black and the white and make those cuts. It's harder to, in the day-to-day life, set boundaries that you practice while also navigating a world where there are other people and their boundaries and their needs and their things. Like that's where the work is. Like the black and white is much easier.
100%. That's why we do it.
Yes.
That's why we do it.
And that's why I can do that. Like I can actually put a situation that isn't black and white. I can overthink it into a place that it is black and white. So I can have some kind of control or peace or safety to know, oh, I can predict this outcome. Now I know that. And I can, but we can't predict anything. We don't know anything.
No.
And then, as you said, you miss these opportunities.
Right. So again, just shifting that word from resolution to intention is such a practice of self-compassion. So that was the essence of that podcast.
Yeah, I loved
And
it. It really landed.
oh, I'm
I mean,
glad.
you do just in general, anything we've ever talked about. It's just Jackie. It just feels, just when I hear your name, even it's always like, oh, Jackie.
I'm so
Anyway,
glad.
yeah,
But
but
you
yeah,
know, that goes back to the thing that we just talked about, which is curiosity. And what
yeah,
kills curiosity is black and white thinking.
right. Of course, right.
Mhm. As opposed to what's possible.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, what kills curiosity
Is
is
black
black
and
and
white
white
thinking.
thinking.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love
Hmm. And
this.
when you stay curious, you stay buoyant.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
don't sink.
Yeah.
So, like, if somebody says something snarky to you, right? If they consistently say something snarky to you, then maybe
Right.
there's a different
Bye-bye.
discussion.
Yeah.
But if somebody says something snarky to you, my first reaction, because I'm always looking for the black and white too, and I have to talk myself out of that, is to either say something snarky back or to immediately think, oh, well, you know, they're a nasty person. I don't need to have them in my life. Right. Like, it's like
Right.
you want to take the shortcut.
Yeah.
But if you stay curious and say, what did you mean by that?
Yeah.
Look at how that
Wow.
changes the energy.
Yeah.
And then they either
Absolutely.
have to explain that they were being a douchebag or that
Yeah.
you misunderstood them or
Yeah.
that maybe they apologize and they're like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean it like that.
Yeah. But again, you just opened the door to the
Yeah.
possibilities as you're talking about of
Yeah.
maybe a different outcome, or maybe they did. I mean, it's so
And maybe you'll
beautiful.
have the
It's so
same outcome.
simple.
Maybe they were kind of a douchey person and that's that.
Yeah,
But
but
then
you
you'll
won't
know.
have to know or wonder, if like, what if, like, you just that whole thing you were talking about of like, I think sometimes it can feel really bad when when something kind of feels like a record scratch versus like
Mm-hmm.
something that actually has either closure or something that actually, I don't know. There's just a difference in that. For me anyway, I hate sitting in that feeling of like,
Me too.
that didn't that isn't what I meant. But now that feels like the door is closed. So maybe I'm just not going to say anything or do anything.
Yeah.
But if in the moment you can just pause and have a second to say, like, wait a second, something about this doesn't feel right. Let me just be curious.
Yeah.
And if that person does the same thing or I have the same, reaction, then yes, it's done. But maybe it could be different. And then maybe
Yeah.
no one is left with this kind of icky feeling that you're then walking around with. I don't know.
Or
Yeah.
waking up in the middle of the night, replaying the conversation in your head because we're overthinkers.
Absolutely. And then not sleeping.
I
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah.
know. I know.
Jackie. Yeah. I'm like, so you're life coaching. You work with people in our industry
Yeah, mostly. I mean,
mostly.
I do layman too, right? But
Yeah.
so all kinds of professional people and non-professional. But the bulk of my clientele tend to be from the
In
entertainment
the
business.
industry. But like in terms of working with you, is it through a website or do we find you on social media or yeah.
All the above. So I have a
Okay.
website. It's just my name, JackieDeCrinis.com. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
JackieDeCrinis.com. Or social media. I'm also Jackie DeCrinis on Instagram. I think I'm Jackie DeCrinis Life Coach on Facebook,
Yeah.
and then Jackie DeCrinis LinkedIn. And then the podcast is The Overthinker's Guide to Joy. And people can reach me in any millions
And-
of ways. They can
right.
DM me, they can send me
Right.
an email, they can schedule through my website for a free consultation. And I work with people one-on-one. So
Yeah.
I'm very selective about who I take,
I love this.
because I want it to be a good fit.
Yeah.
And I don't take, like, some coaches take hundreds of people and teach, these large mastermind courses. I do one-on-one because I like the intimacy of coaching one-on-one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this. I want to talk to you about me time.
Tell me about me time. Tell me,
No, I
that's
want
where
to
we
ask
were.
you about yours. And I want to ask you
Oh,
because I have a tendency. So I want to ask you like it for you because in working with people, I would imagine too, like just energetically, that can also be like, how do you take care of yourself in like the face of doing all this work with other people? I ask people a lot of times, like, what if I had to say, like, what is your go-to like recharge or your 5 minutes a day? And I know you probably have a really great practice of this, but also I like asking people what are like just for fun, what are like three things you can't live without right now? So we'll do me time first.
okay.
How does Jackie spend her me time? How do you recharge?
So the answer is the same to both questions.
I love this.
So
Okay.
my me time is also my like practices.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Oh, your practices, I'm sorry, with like the
My
practices
daily
that you do, not
practices
your,
are
right.
also my me time. So for me, they're one and the same.
Okay.
The things that I cannot live without are daily meditation, daily exercise, and healthy eating. Like those are the three things that like are my
How
go-to.
you take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
And when I don't do those three things, I go off the rails. I mean, I get lethargic and I get sad or I get anxious, or I mean, very much what I put in my body and what I do with my body dictates how I feel.
Yeah.
So yeah, and meditation is sort of like my foundational practice that I
How
start
long?
my day with.
Okay. When did you get into meditation?
So I studied transcendental in 2017. So that's
I
how I
want to talk
started.
about this with you off the podcast, but yes, go on.
Okay. So that's how I
Mhm.
started. And I
Mhm.
did that for about 2 years every day. That's 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon in silence with a mantra. And that was a beautiful way to train. But what I found was that when I became a coach, it was just too daunting for people to take that on amongst
Mhm.
all the other things
Mhm.
that we talk about.
Mhm.
It's hard enough to get people to meditate at all, much less, and now I want you to go learn how to do transcendental. So what I started doing so that I could offer it to others was guided meditations. And I recorded a number of them, which are on my podcast, on my YouTube channel, so that people who have absolutely no tolerance for sitting in silence or with their eyes closed could do it. And my whole thing was,
Wow.
I will teach you how to meditate 5 minutes a day, even if you absolutely hate it.
Wow. Wait, this is where your YouTube
My
channel?
YouTube channel and my
Okay.
podcast has it.
Okay.
And yeah, so they're
Okay.
everywhere. And I always say, you don't have to use mine. They're just there for you for free because they're easy and
Yeah.
they're short.
Yeah.
But I recommend to everybody, if you're getting started in meditation, you don't want to use mine, you can, the Peloton app, you can buy it without the bike, and they have
Yeah.
fabulous meditations.
Oh, I love
Um,
that.
the Calm app,
Love the Calm app. Yeah. Yeah.
there's Insight Timer, which I've never used, but a lot of my clients use. There's
Mhm.
Headspace. It's just, like, it doesn't matter. Or you
Right.
can just YouTube guided meditation.
Right.
So I've gone from traditional transcendental meditation twice a day, 20 minutes in silence, to 5 to 20 minutes every morning guided
Okay.
meditation.
Love
So
that.
that works better for me. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's something that I can preach to anybody
Yeah.
that's doable.
Yeah.
The other seems a little bit more daunting. And I'm not saying I won't go back to TM, but that morning
I'm
meditation
so
is really
curious.
great for me.
Yeah, I feel like morning is would be mine too. I'm not into, that's like the one world in me time that I haven't explored that I think I'll just say my 2024 intention, not resolution, but yes, is
Mhm.
I am very curious about this world and I want to sort of I'm very curious about the world of TM, but meditation just in general. I know how I feel like, I can get like a runner's high, which
Mhm.
I feel is like kind of that space for me a little bit.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like I can't describe runners. I'm sure you probably know just from like working out or whatever you do too. Like there's a
Mine is tennis and pickleball. That's the high for me.
Oh God, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a feeling like I don't get it right away. I can be running for 10, 15, 20, but when it kicks in, it's like that's where I'm like, oh my God, if this is what meditation feels like, if I could somehow get into that space, although movement is really helpful for me in meditating,
Yes.
or even the guided, like I do
Yeah.
really well, like walking and things.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a world I'm just very curious about. So your me time is meditating.
Meditating, exercise,
Exercise,
specifically playing
like what you
pickleball or
said.
tennis,
Yeah,
and healthy eating is my sort of my go-to.
right.
Yeah. So
I
those
love
are my
how,
three.
yeah. And they're the same. Like that's what I say. It's so great because I'm like, well, what's Jackie's me time is the same as her things that she can't live without. And that is so, I feel the same way. Mine changes daily of whatever that me time might be. It could
Uh-huh.
be
Tell
some
me.
days it's simple of like just sitting on my balcony and feeling the sun on my face for for 5 to 10 minutes that,
Yeah.
and just going back to the day after that. And sometimes it's extravagant, like, hopping on a plane and taking a trip somewhere for a week by myself. But I can't live without my me time either, because I see it as that kind of a practice. But yours, I think, might be a little healthier than
I don't agree. I think
well,
whatever brings you the joy or the
right,
peace
right,
is perfect.
right.
As long as it's not self-medicating, right? So like I always
Yes.
say, like if we're into like, oh, well, I take a lot of drugs or a lot of alcohol to mask feeling bad, I would
Yeah.
argue probably not a long-term strategy.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with a great glass of champagne or a margarita, nothing wrong
Right.
with some dark chocolate, nothing wrong with all the good things of life,
Yeah.
but not as a self-medicating.
Right.
Yeah.
I love how gentle you are with all of these things. Like you'll rarely say like that's a no. Like even just like on the drinking, it's like no, there's like enjoy this or enjoy that. Just don't let it be this,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
I love
I
this.
always say, as long as you can, if you can do anything, I mean, and again, we're ruling out anything illegal, anything harming other people, right?
Those are
But
yeah.
anything that's within the confines of moral appropriateness, if you do anything in moderation, I think it's totally fine.
Yeah.
Anything, right?
Yeah.
Like if, cake is your thing and you can eat it in moderation, eat cake.
Yes, let them eat cake.
Yeah, let them eat cake. But I think when you the sort of the litmus test for is it okay for me is, and I was just talking to another client about this, when you can't stop. So if you go to Vegas and gambling's your thing, fine. And you can set a limit. And again, a limit is within everybody's means, right? So somebody very, very wealthy, maybe a limit is $50,000, but for the average person, I would think a limit is like $100 or $200.
Couple $100. Yeah.
I think that's,
yeah.
If you can do that and have a good time, awesome.
Do it. Yeah.
If you're pulling a slot machine or putting dice on a table or flipping cards in blackjack, and there's something that lights up in your brain and you can't walk away.
Yeah.
And so $100 is gone and there's another 100, there's another 100, there's another. Then that means for you.
Yeah. For you specifically. Yes.
For you specifically, that's a problem.
Right.
Which means you then can't do it because you can't exercise in moderation.
Right.
So I've had clients who, I've had a lot of weight loss clients over the years, and we always take alcohol out at first, right? And you can have it later on, but when you're losing weight, it's empty calories. It doesn't help.
Yeah.
And my clients feel so good or whatever. And then many of them have no problem reintroducing healthy eating habits, but they're like, well, I went back to drinking wine, but I can't have one glass. And I go, oh, what? Why not? And they're like, I don't know. As soon as I have one, I need 3.
Whoa. Right.
And I'm like, then that's a problem for you.
Yeah.
That's not a judgment problem. That means that you don't have an off switch for it.
Right.
And we all just need to know what do or don't
those
we
are
have off switch. Right.
Yeah.
So some people it's shopping, and some people it's sex, and some people it's drinking, and some people it's marijuana, and some people it's drugs. And if you can't do it in moderation, then it's probably not for you.
Yeah. I love how individual you make it all as well, because it's just like in relationships too. I feel like everyone's deal breakers are different. Everyone's needs are different. Like there is no blanket, one handbook, one way,
No.
It's like figuring it out what it is for you.
Which is what you said about me time, which was so awesome, which is it changes all the time. That's okay too.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Like it's okay. Notice.
Yeah. It's okay to have it. It's different every day. Cause for me, it's wherever I am in my life. And I said to you at the top of this podcast, just as you speak about moderation, me time for me I can check myself because I think pretty good at it. Like, knowing, oh, okay, Maggie, we need to like come back to ourselves. Like, what are we going to do? And then that can also go too far. That can also turn into isolation. It can also turn into, a place where it's like, oh, this isn't necessarily the way I need. My me time actually now is needing to connect. I might need to connect with somebody. It doesn't always have to be alone, but that's what I mean by like the changes of it's
Right.
different. Yeah, it can be or look different.
Yeah. And that's that black and white thinking again,
Yes,
because
exactly.
we get down that rabbit hole where like, okay, well, this is working, so I'll just do this. And then all of a sudden
Right.
you're like, I haven't seen anybody for 5 days.
That has happened to me many times. I once had a therapist say to me, I mean, I was going through something, but at the time where I was like, I just want to be isolated. I just want to be away. And she was like, every third day you have to accept an invitation. You're only allowed 3 days to isolate. So yeah. And it was really good. That was actually really helpful because I can find myself being like, because I work from home now too. So there's a lot of like and I love that. And I thrive in that kind of, but then I can also be like, I have not been in my car since Monday. Okay, okay.
Yeah, I do it too.
The house,
I do it
Maggie.
too.
Yeah.
I do
It's
too.
good.
And particularly because I work from home,
Yeah. Yeah. You
days will
understand.
go by and I'll be like, oh, when was the last time I went
What in the
outside?
world?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Jackie, I could talk to you. I want to have you back.
I'd love to come back.
I just can like talk. This is the way it's always been with Jackie. Like the second she would show up on set, and even now, even 20, almost 20 years later.
I know.
I mean, we're at 20, sorry, we're at 18, right? 18 years since like premiered, I think.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it still feels exactly the same. Like I just want
Yeah.
to talk to you about everything. Um,
Well, and I just have to say, I said this on your other podcast too. You have not aged 1 minute.
This is really why I wanted to have her on the podcast. So she would no.
You
Stop.
look so fabulous and you
Oh, look at
still look
me.
like this young girl. I'm like, how can it be 18 years? You look like you're 18.
Oh my God, I love you. And that's not true, but thank you. By the way, same. Same. You look exactly the same, Jackie. We really do. But I also think, it speaks to like I think what we're trying to do, but like what you do is also, you love what you do. You're happy where you are, that you see that. And
Yeah, I
anyway, so
do.
I appreciate you saying it, even though I do not feel, that I
Oh
look
no,
the same as I did 18 years
as
ago.
gorgeous as always.
Stop. Okay, so
Thank you.
listen to Jackie's podcast, Overthinker's Guide to Joy. Check out her website,
Yeah.
YouTube for her meditation tips, like all that. Like you're like an angel. I just love you so
Oh,
much.
so sweet. I
And
love
I
you
won't take
too.
any more of your day today, but I want to like I don't know. I want to do more things with you.
Let's do it.
I just want to do stuff with Jackie.
Let's do it. Let's have
Okay.
more. Let's have more dates.
Let's have more dates,
All
please.
right. All
Okay.
right, Maggie. This
And
is awesome.
we will
Thank you
talk
so
soon.
much. Happy New Year and good luck
Happy
with your
New Year.
intention for meditation this year.